because as we begin day 43 of the government shutdown, lawmakers have taken another step toward ending the longest funding lapse in U.S. history. Last night, the House Rules Committee met for the first time in weeks and advanced the Senate-passed bill to reopen the government after turning down Democratic amendments that would have extended the Enhanced Affordable Care Act subsidies. This bill extends funding for most agencies until the end of January, while including 3 full-year funding bills for some parts of the government. Today, a sentence I haven't been able to say in weeks, the House will be back in session. They're scheduled to hold votes for the first time since September 18th. Republicans are hopeful the funding bill could pass as soon as today, likely tonight, before being sent to President Trump's desk to be signed into law. Trump commented on the shutdown yesterday during an interview with former NFL punter and media personality Pat McAfee.
We just had a big win against the Democrats with the opening. They shut down our country. They wanted $1.5 trillion to be paid to people.
Is that open again? I heard there's like, Mr. President, is that open? I heard there's like a 30. I don't know your guys' world well, but is it open? I heard there's like a 30-hour time period where maybe it's not. Are we back open?
It's a little time. Well, it doesn't until the House votes. So the House is going to vote, and I think they're going to vote positively. I think most people want to see it open. Only people that hate our country want to see it not open.
Joining us now, MSNBC congressional reporter Michael Schnell. I think you just put it nicely. Pat McAfee talking cloture was not on our bingo board this morning.
Anything can happen during the longest government shutdown in history.
That is probably a fair statement. And yet, I'm sort of hoping that there are no surprises between now and this evening, because we are expecting the House to come back. They've already started making their way and actually do a vote sometime this evening on reopening the government. Is your expectation right now that that's fine, that's going to pass?
Yeah, it seems like it's on a glide path at this point. There's just a question of when. You know, the earliest we could see a vote this afternoon is 4 p.m. That's what leadership has said. As you mentioned, members have to get back to town. I guess one snafu that we could see pop up is if there are attendance issues. I mean, members are having issues like all Americans are of trying to get back to Washington. We were talking yesterday, Congressman Derek Van Orden, he's a Republican from Wisconsin. He's driving his Harley Davidson back to D.C. because he doesn't want to have to deal with the potential issues that airfare could bring to the table. So other than attendance issues and travel, I think this is on a glide path. We've seen the majority of Republicans, including moderates, but also people like members of the House Freedom Caucus, which are usually the issue areas for government funding. They're behind this bill. Republicans can get it over the finish line alone. You know, they can only lose 2 members. There's a possibility they will lose Thomas Massie, a Republican from Kentucky, who frequently votes against Republicans on issues of fiscal matters. But it's possible that Democrats could also offer some moderate votes, some of those folks who are in red districts. So the short answer to your question is yes, it seems like this is a glide path, but it's also Congress and the House of Representatives. So always keep the eye out for those.
It's not over until it's gavelled out.
That's right.
As we always tell all of our shows and colleagues here at MS. I think the other piece of this, too, is Democrats are furious, right? I mean, you've got some reporting on the way that they've called the deal that Senate Democrats made with Republicans indefensible, effectively. I've also got some reporting that shows that as much as they are angry, and they are, they're also sort of moving into the acceptance phase, recognizing that health care now is a more salient issue, even though this is not the ending that they wanted. How might we see that balancing act between fury and acceptance play out over the course of the next few days?
Look, it's an interesting dynamic, right? Because no one was enjoying this government shutdown. It didn't behoove anybody. There were federal workers who weren't getting paid. There were SNAP beneficiaries who maybe weren't going to get their money. Other federal employees were getting laid off altogether. Nobody was supportive of this shutdown, but it's a matter of what Democrats could have gotten out of it. So as you're reporting this morning in your great piece, Democrats who were supportive of this deal, who helped negotiate it, have said we weren't going to get anything better. Look, it was 41 days. Today's day 43, but before it was 41 days. The shutdown wasn't getting us anywhere, and it wasn't even moving the ball forward towards where we wanted. At some point, you got to cut loose, take your wins, and move on. So that's what we're hearing from those supporters and negotiators. Now, of course, we will continue to hear from those opponents who say we wish we held out longer. We think we could have gotten a deal. But at the end of the day, nobody's going to be upset that the government is reopened, federal workers are getting paid, and SNAP beneficiaries are getting their money. So sort of when you talk about the practicalities, yes, Democrats are going to be happy that the government is open. Politically, though, do they wish it was handled differently? Absolutely.
But I always thought, even at the start of this, that politically there was always going to be a group of them, whether it was in Congress, at the grassroots, across the board, who wished it was handled differently. Yeah. However, it ultimately got handled. And I think that you're right. One of the tension points that I pull out in my new piece is the idea that from the moment that Senator Jeanne Shaheen, for example, voted against the government staying open, or I guess voted to shut it down, she was instantly looking for a way out of that posture, immediately doubling up with Angus King, the independent from Maine, trying to find some kind of a deal going forward. And look, even at Election Day, which I think is an inflection point for so many of these members, there was this view of like, yes, this is a great political moment for us, but moderates really worried about overreading and overplaying their hand to the point where a lot of ideas were floating around in caucus. And Senator Hassan, according to my reporting, said, okay, that idea of a one-year extension of ACA credits, what happens if that doesn't work? And I think that was always the question that was moving them along throughout the negotiations. A fascinating way to look at how the deal came together and all of the different pieces as it did. But now that we're here, we're starting to dig into some of the provisions. And one of them that's catching the attention is a provision that was included in this deal that would allow senators to sue the federal government if their private phone data was accessed without notification. Because of the time periods outlined in this provision, it opens the door for 8 Senate Republicans to potentially sue the federal government for hundreds of thousands of dollars, resulting from the acquisition of their phone records during former special counsel Jack Smith's investigation into January 6th. If successful, these lawsuits could award $500,000 of actual damages per violation. So that's one piece. And then there's also this. Some Republicans in Congress say they're on board with extending the Affordable Care Act subsidy, so the separate new negotiation that Democrats have been demanding, but only if new restrictions on abortion coverage are included. This kind of all goes back to the Hyde Amendment, which already bars the use of federal funds from covering abortions under Obamacare. That was a big debate at the time when they originally passed that legislation. Now Republicans want to go further by blocking the use of state or other non-federal funds for those services. Senate Majority Leader John Thune indicated that without stronger abortion funding limits, Republicans won't support an extension of the subsidies. Democrats have, of course, pushed back against that proposal. Among them, Senator Jeanne Shaheen of New Hampshire. She was, of course, among the group of lawmakers that voted to pass the funding deal to reopen the government, a key broker of that deal. She said Democrats wouldn't agree to the stricter limits, calling it a non-starter. I mean, in my conversation with Shaheen, she referenced the fact that they kept the Hyde Amendment piece in the original Obamacare negotiations. But the other thing that I think is interesting here is the way that it's clear there are Republicans behind the scenes who see upside in making some kind of a deal on this issue. And that's always been the political secret here that was so poorly kept, which is that this actually benefits everybody to get on board and talk about.
Yeah, I mean, look, abortion has always been one of those really prickly issues for Republicans. This was, of course, in clear view after Roe v. Wade was overturned in 2022, I believe that was. And we saw those midterm elections, which were very clearly in Democrats' favor, in large part because they had the win behind their back from that Supreme Court decision. It's always been a difficult issue for Republicans, right? They haven't known how to approach it. This is a party that for years, for decades even, they have campaigned on the fact that they were going to topple Roe. Well, that happened. So how do you message that going forward? It's a
especially when it's unpopular and out of step with the majority of Americans.
Right. And look, it's a fascinating dynamic. I will say that I think that some folks thought that 2024 elections for Democrats would go better for them because they thought that the anger and frustration from that Supreme Court decision was still going to be raw. That obviously wasn't the case. There were Republican victories. However, it's still a salient issue, and it's one that Democrats know that they have a leg up on. So anytime it's in the news like this, it's going to help them, especially as we're starting to get into campaign season, because it's been one of those things that Democrats just have really Republicans, have really struggled to get a handle on.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, how many times have we talked about them as the dog that caught the car and then politically now fear potentially getting run over by it every time this issue resurfaces? Where do they go?